Congratulations on receiving the 2024 Michèle Auger Service Award from the Biophysical Society of Canada. It's a huge honor to talk to you today.
Thanks. It's wonderful to talk to you as well.
Please tell us about the award and how you felt when you first heard the news.
Well, it was a surprise, one would say. I got an email from the president of the Biophysical Society of Canada informing me that I'd gotten this award. I've been very much involved in the Biophysical Society of Canada since 2014, 2015. It's a society that I've always felt very closely with, so it was a very pleasant surprise.
One of your contributions cited in the award is your role in organizing the first targeted Biophysical Society of Canada meeting in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a targeted meeting is and what led to this idea?
It's interesting because the Biophysical Society of Canada has had a connection with Winnipeg, albeit a little bit indirectly. Many people know of Ian Smith, who was a researcher in NMR spectroscopy, especially. He was very interested in imaging. At the time of the award, he was actually a professor. His group in research was in Ottawa, and he was a part of the NRC. But then his group in the NRC did a lot of good research in Winnipeg, and he actually has been very closely involved with our faculty. So Ian was one of the founders of the society in 1985. Sometimes when you have too many people who are very good researchers involved in the society, there are not enough people to actually also think about how to run a society or how to expand the society. Its most probably prominent thing that it did for Canadian science was that it would sponsor 2 students to go to the Biophysical Society conference in the United States. That's the big international biophysical society that existed over there, and that was what they were doing. In 2012 and 2014, I actually was organizing a symposium on biophysical chemistry at the Canadian Society, the Chemical Society of Canada meeting in Calgary, and after that in Vancouver in 2014. And at that time, I met the current president of the society, John Bainziger, at that time. And John was quite impressed with how I had run that conference, and he was impressed by the people who were there. And I think it was one of the more successful symposia in the Canadian Society of Chemistry meetings. And then he said, Mazdak, what do you think about the Biophysical Society of Canada? And I said, well, I know it does exist, but it hasn't had any scientific presence in Canadian science. And he said, why don't you join a part of the executive? And at that time, everything was very ad hoc. And I said, sure, I'm interested to help. And so we were talking about how we can actually revitalize the society. And what I told John was that I think the best way that the society can become relevant is that it has to have a conference. We have to have an annual meeting, so that people can come together, we can define ourselves as a society. Because if we don't do that, we cannot be a society at all. We have to have a meeting. So in 2015, there was one of the people in the society, Dr. Leonenko, is a professor in Waterloo. She ran a nanoscience meeting, which she kind of made it conjoint with the Biophysical Society. She just had joined the society. She also was very enthusiastic about the society. So she wanted to actually do something. And she had already had this conference planned. And she did that in Waterloo. And John and I were there. And it was a very good conference, but it was mostly nano stuff. And there were some biophysical people who were involved in nanoscience in there. It is the first time that we had a meeting organized by the Biophysical Society of Canada. I told John that, we need to go a step higher, and we need to actually have a meeting in which people from different areas of biophysics get together, showcase their research. So what we organized in Winnipeg, and that's why it's called the first targeted society, is that we actually were able to organize a meeting in order to bring all biophysicists together. And I had help from people in University of Manitoba. They helped me co-organize this. Our Dean, Brian Mark, was one of the organizers. So Brian was actually one of the people who helped me organize this conference. Stephanie Porte from mathematics was one of the organizers as well. Francis Lin was the third person who organized this as well. So these were all people who wanted to get this up and going, and we got it up and going. And we had very, very good speakers, and we tried to actually not only have good speakers, I'm very proud to think that we were also quite diverse. I mean, it was a diverse group of people. We were able to have a very good selection of people. Our most important keynote speaker was Louis Kay, who's a very prominent NMR spectroscopist in Canada. We had excellent people from the States come over, Susan Marchese and Bob Matthews. These are the gurus of protein folding that were coming over here. We had also people like John Dutcher, who's a phenomenal instrumental biophysicist working with very cool instrumentation and cool systems. Elizabeth Meering, who is one of the very excellent biophysical chemists in this country, was also giving a wonderful talk. So it was just a very wonderful, wonderful meeting that happened. Everybody who was here was very impressed by the meeting that we had. But more importantly, this was the start of how we should run a meeting and how we should be bringing biophysicists in Canada together. And currently, I think this is going to be the 8th meeting that we're going to be having this year, which is phenomenal. We have meetings in which we have about 200 or more than 200 researchers and students and biophysical people coming together. I think what really was there was the love of the subject matter. I think that biophysics is an important area of life sciences. It's an area that is very useful because it's the part of biology and biochemistry that actually gives numbers to things. And as I'm somebody who enjoys talking precisely, I think that's my love. And I really felt that this was some way that I could contribute and I could make a difference. And so that's why I wanted to do it.
What role do you think scientific societies play in our world today? And what would you like to see them do more? I
think scientific societies in general, they exist to promote the science. Many societies also have publications associated with it. So this allows us to provide a forum for people to meet each other and exchange, ideas with one another, which is always phenomenal. It's good to look at what they're doing, and you get great inspiration from people who look in the field that is close to you. But sometimes you need a fresh influx. You need ideas, you need a different angle of looking at. You need to look at your problem from a different angle. And these are opportunities that students can use to learn new things and understand that science isn't necessarily only the small area of work that I am spending my time in. It gives you a perspective of where you stand scientifically in this world. It's both informative and it can be also a bit humbling, which is actually not a bad thing for scientists for us to have.
Why do you think it's important for young scientists, such as students and postdocs, to get involved in their scientific societies?
Because they are the future. These societies it doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to the people over there. If we love our field, we want to contribute. But at the end, our life is finite, our scientific contribution is finite. There are many people, even the best of researchers have a finite contribution to whatever is happening. As a society, we have to do is that if any society needs to worry about its future, and it can only survive if we make our contributions and we allow other people to come in and encourage them to come in and make a contribution. It's important to know how a conference is put together. How do you get people together? These are all important things for anybody who wants to practice science to know. I always think that young people should always think of going to meetings and conferences to be important as something vital for the development of themselves as scientists. We're trying to train people who have open minds, and participating in these things, presenting your work, which is very lovely, but more importantly, and that's the hard part, listening to other people's work and trying to understand other people's work is a very important step for our education as scientists.
If you look back at your younger self, what would you tell yourself?
If I wanted to give myself one piece of advice as a scientist, that would be that I wish I knew much more biology than I know right now. Because my trajectory was as a chemist and as a physical chemist. I moved from somebody who really had very little biological background to doing research in biology. And if I could do it all over again, I would have learned more biology. I would have loved to be able to be much more competent in biological lab work.